Denis Villeneuve should stick to Dune 3 being his last Dune movie, or risk destroying its legacy. Warning: major spoilers for Frank Herbert's Dune Messiah. The latest installment of Denis Villeneuve's cinematic Dune saga, currently known by the title Dune 3, is advancing toward a late 2026 release. However, Villeneuve's third movie, which is based on Frank Herbert's sequel novel Dune, Messiah, should be the filmmaker's last. Although Herbert wrote a total of 6 Dune novels, including one further sequel that features Timothée Chalamet's character Paul Atreides, it would be a mistake for Villeneuve to bring any more of Herbert's work to the big screen. Not only would additional Dune movies take Villeneuve away from other film projects, but they would risk destroying the legacy he has built for the franchise. Of course, there will be legions of franchise fans who want to see Frank Herbert's entire collection of Dune books adapted in chronological order of release on the big screen. The fact is, however, Paul Atreides only works as a cinematic hero for the plot of the original Dune novel and its sequel Dune, Messiah. What happens in Herbert's third novel, Children of Dune, would undermine the on-screen characters Villeneuve and Chalamet have shaped. Befitting an enigmatic, messianic hero of science fiction, the story of Paul Atreides appears to end ambiguously in Frank Herbert's book Dune, Messiah. After becoming blind and having lost the ability to prophesize, Paul abides by a tradition of the Fremen, the people of the planet Arrakis, and wanders out into the desert. By this act, Atreides is literally submitting himself to Dune, which is another term for Arrakis and an allusion to the planet's landscape. What's more, by respecting Fremen customs, he is securing their loyalty to the House of Atreides for future generations. We can expect Villeneuve to end the character arc of Paul Atreides more or less the way Herbert does in Dune, Messiah. If Denis Villeneuve ends Dune 3 in this way, then we won't see Paul Atreides die. Timothée Chalamet's character will simply disappear into the wilderness of Arrakis, unvanquished but humanized. It will be the perfect ending for a Dune trilogy that centers on Atreides, as the saga's hero retains the veil of mystery with which he first entered the story. While Dune 3 will inevitably be different from the book Dune, Messiah in certain aspects, in general terms Villeneuve should remain faithful to the overarching plot of the novel, as he did when adapting Frank Herbert's Dune for his previous 2 movies. On this basis, we can expect Villeneuve to end the character arc of Paul Atreides more or less the way Herbert does in Dune, Messiah, honoring his hero's legacy with a suitably open-ended exit from the big screen. On the other hand, if Villeneuve were to go back on his original plan for a trilogy of Dune movies and continue with a further sequel based on Frank Herbert's Children of Dune, this decision would completely ruin the ending of Paul Atreides' story. Children of Dune brings Paul back from the desert in the guise of a mysterious preacher, only to have him publicly murdered in a humiliating fashion by the forces of his sister Aelia against her will. For the central figure of Dune and Dune, Messiah to die in such arbitrary and apparently unnecessary circumstances undercuts the entire story arc of Paul Atreides. Not only is his death an anticlimax, but it cheapens his heroic acts of survival prior to this moment, as well as his journey into the desert. It's clear that Herbert is drawing an allegorical comparison between Paul Atreides and Jesus Christ, who according to the gospel returned from the desert to preach the word of God against the established religious order before being killed by the Romans for his actions. Nevertheless, continuing the story of Paul Atreides in this way just doesn't work in cinematic terms, and would not work with what the first 2 movies have done. Even leaving aside what a Denis Villeneuve adaptation of Children of Dune would do to Paul Atreides, more than 3 Dune films based on the books would end up killing the director's franchise anyway. There's already widespread trepidation about how Villeneuve will manage to make a success out of Dune, Messiah, given that Frank Herbert's sequel novel is far bleaker in tone and more obscure in narrative terms than the book that came before it. If Herbert's second novel is a challenge, though, it's nothing compared to the complications Villeneuve would have with Children of Dune, let alone Herbert's final 3 Dune novels.